rhymes with lost. Yoste is the moniker of singer-songwriter and producer Kurt Sines. With his music, he tries to answer his own questions while commenting on what he sees around him to produce songs that are cathartic and aligned with the moment. He moves others while standing still with his music that stirs thoughts with relatable themes and relevant topics. Easy to love, his music is hard to forget, and never would you want to.
So, a fan since Calcifier. Back in 2016, I've listened to you grow and evolve as an artist. Your latest album, Never the Same, mirrors your career in that you are constantly changing, constantly progressing as an artist. Yet you have this signature style that sets you apart from the rest. So, question for you first and foremost is, what is that common thread that weaves all of your music together?
I don't entirely know. I'm really glad that you think there is one, because I remember when I was in musical projects and bands before I started going by the name of Yoste and making Yoste music, I struggled with that. I think it's some kind of rite of passage that you always try to achieve when you're a younger musician, of trying to make your music all sound like your music and not pop punk 1 second and ambient neoclassical the next. You really want it to have some kind of connection. So I'm glad you think it does have that. I'm not entirely sure what it is, but I think to the point of the music changing over time, I think that's probably fairly inevitable, because all my music's really introspective anyway, and it's just a reflection of what I'm into and what I'm thinking about and what I'm listening to. So I guess to the extent that I change over time, my music changes over time as well. But maybe it all feels like my music because I don't change it that much. Maybe it's that I change a little bit, but not too much.
Well, and so let's get right into this, what I just referenced, your new album. So of the 6 songs that comprise Never the Same, my favorite track is Violet. I'd love to just hear the story behind this song.
Well, I wrote Violet way back in 2019, actually, is when I first conceived of the song and first started the production. And it was finished-ish fairly quickly. And then I played it all on tour in 2019. And then for whatever reason, it never quite made its way onto the next 2 EPs that I put out. In between then and now, and this latest EP, for which it's the lead single. And I'm not entirely sure why. But to cut to your question of what it's about, it sounds as if lyrically it could be about a relationship, particularly the "tell me that you love me, that I'm part of your life." But I really much more conceive that as like to be about a toxic relationship with an audience, not just social media, but the idea of an audience generally, like to have people paying attention to what you're doing, and the extent to which you can get far too tied to that, and it can be a problem for your own development and your own peace. So that's really what I conceived the song about. It's almost like a cynical take of needing to be loved by an audience.
That's really, really interesting. And it sort of leads into the next question, because specifically in Violet, there are a few lines I wanted to discuss. And that is, first, tell me that you love me, that I'm part of your life. And you fast forward to tell me that I matter, it'll all be all right. So this speaks to that need that we all have, right? To be loved. And that external emotional validation is something that we can all identify with, whether it's with a partner or, as you're saying, with an audience. As an artist, how important is it for you to have your work connect with other people?
I feel like it's a common thing for me and many of my friends in music that I talk to, is it's such a double-edged sword, because to the extent, I mean, of course you want people to listen to your music, but there's almost like this petulant, childish rebellion that we all have. Like once you get to what you always wanted, which is people paying attention to what you're doing and enjoying it, that's great. But then you obviously can so easily become overly attached to that, and it just spirals out of control, much like eating junk food or anything else. So getting control over that impulse is an eternal struggle, and that's kind of the core of Violet, is like rebelling against that a little bit.
That's really, really fascinating. So to keep on this Violet kick here, So in that same song, as opposed to the external validation that we just spoke about, you also reference this internal mental validation with the line, "You're depressed, that's cool. Anxiety is a tool." Now, more than ever, mental health is a major issue that's been stigmatized for all too long. And I love how with that one line, you not only normalize depression, but you also reference it in a way that empowers. I was curious.
I hope so. I'm glad you think that.
Yeah.
I was worried about how that line would be interpreted, but ultimately I decided that the point of writing introspective music is that you just be honest and it'll land where it is, and you don't need to worry too much about being overly prescriptive or judgmental, because at the end of the day, you started by talking about yourself really in essence anyway, so
Right.
It is what it is.
Do you have a personal story that you can share about this anxiety as a tool?
Yeah, well, my sense was that though mental health is ever more in the zeitgeist and ever more being normalized and talked about, which is obviously an unequivocally good thing, there was a sense for me of something missing from previous eras where, rather than just accepting poor mental health, which I felt like was trending towards, I don't know, I felt that was the overwhelming sense, is that there were mental health problems and that's just the way it was and we should accept it. And I feel like acceptance is necessary, but it's not everything. And there's an extent to which, especially when you're young, and if you want, and you know, in pop culture and all the greatest aspects of punk and everything it was to be young from the past was this sense that, like, yeah, everything might not be fine, but we're going to rebel against that a little bit anyway. And we might have struggles, but we can overcome them, or at least coexist, and not just sit apathetically and just let our struggles overwhelm us. That's the extent to which I was kind of rebelling against the idea that depression, whilst it should not be stigmatized, I don't think it should be a status symbol either. I think it's something that we can accept and then also still rebel against and still try to overcome. And that was what I was trying to get at there, and utilizing anxiety for its benefits without necessarily letting it overwhelm or become our whole identity.
Right. So you have said the best artists create worlds with their music, and I'm trying to build one of my own. So my question for you is this: what does your world, this one that you're constructing, what does it look and feel like?
It's an ever-evolving question. I'm just sketching it out as I go, I guess, song by song. But if I had to paint a vague picture of what I'd ideally like it to look like, it's the sense that maybe of an evening time you're walking in a beautiful natural space and everything is frayed and desaturated at the edges. It's a little bit dreamlike, it's a little bit animated, or, you know, in the sense that it might feel slightly hand-drawn, almost like walking in a painting. And it feels like you're young and intelligent and full of self-doubt, but ultimately on a path, and you like where that path is going. That's a very pretentious answer, but it is also kind of what I'm trying to achieve.
Well, I think that's a beautiful world, and sign me up. Thank you so much for taking the time today to share just a bit of yourself, a bit of your story, a bit of your songs, and for helping us all become a bit more aware now. Thank you so much for taking your time.
These are really good questions. The best I've had in a long time.
Well, thank you so much for taking your time.
We all come for the violence. We grow up and grow old and just slip into silence. I'm surplus to requirements like you. You're depressed, that's cool. Anxiety's